Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me. If you can, just send me a holler so I know that you can hear me. I'm sorry about the springtime. The clocks moved forward, GMT, so I thought I was starting at 5, but actually I'm starting now, so I apologize for that. So just to introduce myself, my name is Nyambura. I'm a doctor. I have worked in the NHS for more than 10 years. I'm also interested in obesity and lifestyle medicine, and that's become one of my passions over the last year or so, actually. So, I'm here today to just tell you a little bit about me and why I do what I do, and then discuss this huge topic about obesity, diet, and disease. So I'll just wait a little while until a few people come on, and then I can see how we can get on. Right, so we'll get on, and please welcome. And if you have any questions, why don't you pop them in the comment section below, and I'll do my very best to answer as many as I can. I'll talk for about an hour or so, maybe a little bit less, and then we can have a discussion about some of the things that I talk about. Like I said earlier, my name is Nyambura. I'm a medical doctor. I'm based in the UK. And over the last year, I've been absolutely obsessed with metabolic disease and obesity and anything related to that. I have just one second. Hello, Faith. I'm just checking that I'm live. I'm being told I'm not live. I think I am. Great. Hi, guys. Good, I am live. Thanks, Faith. What would we do without you? Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you like this session. This is, like I said, this is my passion. This is what I do. I can talk for hours, as you know. Jane and the rest who were with me in Bournemouth, we kind of raised the roof, didn't we? But I'll do my best to make this as interesting, as informational, as educative, and as informative as I can. So I'm currently working in private practice because I decided that I wanted to focus more on prevention medicine rather than reactive or treatment medicine. I have worked in the National Health Service in the UK for more than 10 years, and I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. As a physician, we are experts in disease diagnosis and management, but we've been taught very, very little about preventing disease in the first place. So I took a break from the NHS a year ago and then went on this journey discovering how it is that we get sick in the first place and what we can do to avoid it, if anything. Just a disclaimer, I often get asked a lot of health questions, people asking me my opinion. Obviously, I'm bringing this to you live, but I'm only telling you my opinion based on my research, based on what I've learned over the last year or so. I'm not able to advise anyone on a one-to-one basis because I'm just not registered to do that. You know, you're more than welcome to join the Insulin clinic virtually or otherwise, and then I'll be your physician and look after you. But in terms of generic questions, I'm more than happy to answer and sort of point you in the right direction. I have no issue with that. So what's going on? You know, why have we got so fat and sick? You know, what is it that's happening? Who or what is responsible for this? It's baffling that, you know, on the last WHO estimates, 1 billion with a B, 1 billion people are obese in the world. And I don't know how we got here. The last time I paid any attention to this, we're still talking about feeding the hungry. And now we have a double burden of malnutrition, with obesity on one hand and hunger on the other. And this is something that really needs to be addressed. And what makes it even more bizarre is there has never been more diets, more fitness programs, more information on the internet. You know, we're living in the information age. We should know what's going on. We should know what to do. We should know how to get thin and healthy. But in this sea of information, year on year, we're getting fatter and we're getting sicker. In the last 3 decades, or even 4 decades, literally from the time I was born, the rates of obesity have trebled. And this is something that baffles me. I think if anything else had trebled, we would be hearing about it on a daily basis. And this is affecting the whole world, developing and developed countries. And in fact, the rates of obesity are increasing significantly at a faster rate in developing countries compared to developed countries. And this is of concern because, you know, I'm from Kenya. The last thing we want is a chronic metabolic disease epidemic. And unfortunately, it's already unfolding as we speak. Obesity is not the only issue. Diabetes is an issue. The rates of obesity and diabetes have increased in parallel, almost as though one is causing the other, or one is related to the other. You know, what is it? What's going on? Why are we diagnosing 8-year-old children with type 2 diabetes? You know, why are children being born obese? Why are we having mothers delivering babies of 5-6 kilograms? So in this video, I'm going to discuss the problem with obesity and why it concerns me so much. I'll also talk about the most likely root causes, in my opinion. I'll touch on national dietary guidelines. I'm based in the UK, but I'll touch on the US ones as well. And I'll try to debunk this nonsense that a calorie is a calorie and that to lose weight you need to eat less calories. You know, that is nonsense, and I'll tell you why. And finally, I'll tell you what you can start doing to lose weight and get healthy, and hopefully answer some questions along the way. So the problem with obesity is this. Obesity is a symptom. Obesity is not a disease. Obesity is a symptom of what we now call chronic metabolic disease. So chronic metabolic disease, some people call it the metabolic syndrome, others call it syndrome X. That's what we called it in medical school. And chronic means long-term as opposed to acute, which is short-term. So we're talking about long-term diseases all related to something. These chronic metabolic diseases are a cluster of conditions, or what I call symptoms, that puts you at risk of developing heart disease, strokes, and diabetes. And these are high blood pressure, high blood sugar, increased waist. So what's relevant there is that I'm talking about fat around the waist. Some people call it abdominal obesity. I call it visceral obesity. So because I'm more interested in the fat surrounding and within the organs. Others call it ectopic fat. This is a type of obesity that concerns me greatly. I mean, I have a lot of people coming to see me in the clinic wanting to lose weight on their arms, on their butt, on their hips, and not really paying attention to the weight around the middle. And I am obsessed with the weight around the middle. So you have high blood pressure, high blood sugar, high waist circumference, and you also have high blood sugars. Now, if you have 3 or more of these, then you really have what we call the metabolic syndrome, and you're significant high risk of developing heart disease, full-blown diabetes, and stroke. You know, some people say, you know, if you have a high blood sugar on one occasion, is that diabetes? Well, diabetes does not happen overnight. It starts very, very gradually. I think I read somewhere that most people have had diabetes for about 8 years prior to diagnosis. So you can imagine, in the world at the moment, every 3 minutes, one person is diagnosed with diabetes. And that's diagnosis. So how many more are walking around with this condition? Now, the metabolic syndrome is also related to other things like a fatty liver, and it's called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And this is when fat accumulates in the liver and causes what they call insulin resistance of the liver, and this makes people very sick and causes these diseases. Now, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is a rising cause of liver failure. And I don't know why I feel that people are not talking about this enough. You know, we've talked about hepatitis C, hepatitis B, HIV-related liver disease, various other types of hepatitis, but actually non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is a symptom of the metabolic syndrome, which occurs with high blood sugar, high blood pressure, diabetes, and the rest of it, is a problem. It's a huge problem, not just in the UK, all over the world. Polycystic ovarian disease is another one. Dementia. I had someone call Alzheimer's dementia type 3 diabetes. Cancers. You must be aware that cancer research has put out a huge advertisement trying to get people aware of the dangers of obesity when it comes to cancer. And, you know, up to 40, maybe even 50% of cancers are related to obesity. And then there's the high, what we call uric acid. This leads to gout. So you have a whole host of conditions which, if you think about it, must have a common denominator if they're all contributing to and causing cancers, heart disease, diabetes, strokes, those kind of things. I mean, I'm Kenyan, and I know that the WHO collaborated with the Ministry of Health a year or two ago, and they were looking at chronic disease patterns all over Kenya. This is part of the government's national health strategy. And they found that up to 70% of hospital admissions in Kenya were related to chronic metabolic disease. And up to 50% of deaths were directly related to chronic metabolic disease. Now, this came as a shock to me because I have never worked as a doctor in Kenya, and I just assumed that, infectious diseases, acute diseases, remained the leading cause of death, at least in the cities, and this is not the case at all. The tide is really changing. The landscape of medicine is changing, and we need to educate ourselves as to what to do. So what is going on in hospitals? What was I doing? Because I was responsible partly. So we would have a patient come in with high blood sugars, tell them they have diabetes, and treat the sugar. Make sure you give them a drug or insulin that lowers the blood sugar. And that was it. We could tick a box and say we've got them better. Or a patient comes in and is diagnosed with high blood pressure, and I would automatically prescribe a blood pressure pill. Others would come in and I would incidentally find very, very high cholesterol levels, or what we've been taught to be high cholesterol levels. And what did I do? I prescribed them cholesterol-lowering medicines. And this is the kind of medicine I've been practicing. I've been treating symptoms and not root causes. I've been treating symptoms. And this is what's happening, I believe, in majority of healthcare systems around the world. More of us need to really be looking at, what is it that's making us sick? What is the common denominator of all these symptoms? And it's something called insulin resistance. So this is the hallmark of this syndrome. It underpins all these processes I've talked about. Insulin resistance is exactly what it says it is. Our weight, by and large, is controlled by the hormone insulin. And if too much insulin is produced, for the body to protect itself, it develops insulin resistance, where it no longer recognizes insulin. Remember that insulin is a hormone or a chemical messenger, and its job is to store food as energy. That's it. So you eat, and it will take the extra carbohydrates and store them in the liver or in the muscles, and it will do the same with the protein that you eat and the fat. That's what insulin does. But if you're overexposed to insulin, mainly because of what we eat, and almost certainly how often we eat, you develop insulin resistance. And this is what we should be treating. If you cure insulin resistance, if you at least attempt to reverse it, and I will tell you how, then you get rid of the high blood pressure, the high blood sugar, your blood lipid markers or fat markers correct themselves, your fatty liver improves, and that is completely reversible, and your waist comes down. And look what you've done. You've treated the root cause and avoided medicines you would otherwise have to prescribe. So I put this to the test, and I decided to start my clinic, Insulean. And the reason I called it Insulean is exactly that. It's all about insulin. I could scream it from the top of a mountain. It really is all about insulin and insulin resistance. And if you address the insulin, you get people slim, and you get them healthy as well. Now, I'm a doctor. I am far more interested in getting people healthy than I am getting them slim. But I'll tell you this, if you get people's insulin under control and reverse the insulin resistance, you have a well person who is always going to be thin. That's what you get. So the weight loss is a consequence of optimal metabolic health. And that's what we try to achieve in this clinic. We focus, and we only focus, on the root causes of these diseases. So something you need to know about the metabolic syndrome is you do not have to be obese or overweight even to develop the metabolic syndrome. In fact, estimates say up to 40% of normal weight individuals, people who you would look at and say, this guy looks okay, this girl looks okay, she doesn't look obese or fat. For up to 40% of people can have the metabolic syndrome without looking outwardly obese. And in fact, these are the people you worry about the most, because the health practitioners will not necessarily pick up on this and then test appropriately. Now, this is why I am obsessed with the waist circumference, because what you'll almost always find is that although these people appear lean, what they are in fact is that they're lean on muscle, but they have fat everywhere else. So it looks like it equals out. And their waist circumference is almost always higher than it should be. And these people can come into my clinic with raging diabetes and very difficult to control high blood pressure. So something is making us sick. And like I said, I was born in the late 70s and obesity rates have tripled since then. So what is it? What is it that's making us sick? I want us to talk about this, and we just go through stuff, let's just go through things one by one. So what could be making all of us sick and fat? In the US, in South America, in New Zealand, which is experiencing phenomenal obesity rates, in the Samoa Islands, in Asia, in the sub-Indian continent, everywhere, in Africa, in East Africa. What is it that's caused all of us to get fat and sick? So is it genetics? And I have to tell you, almost every single client I see asks me or tells me that it's their genes that's made them sick. And I looked into this, and in fact, it's true. There are certain people who are predisposed to obesity, in the same way that there are some people who are predisposed to heart disease or strokes or diabetes even. That exists, and that is true. You can be genetically predetermined to develop a condition, but remember that has to also happen in the right circumstances. And I often say that, genetics loads the gun, but the diet pulls the trigger. So just because you've inherited one or two genes that could potentially make you bigger than others, doesn't determine your destiny, not at all. The researchers have found, I think it's up to 32 different types of genes that contribute to obesity. But what is even more important is the maximum weight you can gain if you inherited every single one of these 32 genes is only 22 pounds in your lifetime. So even then, the genes is not enough. We don't have enough to say, it's my genes. So what is it? Have we just become gluttons? Have we, all over the world, have we all decided to suddenly eat a ton more? Or for that matter, become sloths and move a lot less? Are we all just couch potatoes? Have we just universally, as a human race, decided to eat more and move less? Is that it? Is that what's making us sick and fat? It seems unlikely. It seems unlikely that, this is cross-cultural. It's happening everywhere. Why? What links us all together? Is it environmental toxins? Is there something in our food supply, in the fertilizers that we use to grow the food, in the pollution in our air? Is it plastics and microplastics? Are they affecting us? And we are only beginning to see this in perhaps what we call epigenetics. And this means that although our genes don't change structurally, the way the gene is expressed can change if it's exposed to a certain environmental trigger. That's what epigenetics is. We haven't evolved fast enough. 30 years, 40 years of obesity is nothing in the space of time. It's not even a blink. It's nothing. It doesn't register. So our genes haven't changed, but yeah, sure, epigenetics, environmental toxins, yeah. So plastic pollution. There've been, I think, one herpes virus, so a virus that's been implicated in causing obesity. Sure, there's been that, but that wouldn't have affected all of us in 40 years. What are the chances we've been exposed to the very same environmental toxins, regardless of where we live on the planet? So what is it then? And I think this is what I think, and I think this is a hotly debated topic. Everyone has an opinion, so just hear me out. I think it's the food, and I think this is the elephant in the room. This is what's directly in front of us that we're doing every single day, but not recognizing. Our food environment has changed. You know, those of us who grew up exposed to supermarkets can testify how supermarkets have changed in 30 years. You know, there was an estimate in the, I think it was the US, but can someone correct me if I'm wrong, that there are 54,000 different food products in supermarkets. 54,000. So these are manufactured foods. Now, if our food environment has changed. Has our food environment changed all over the world? Yes, it absolutely has. So let me tell you a little story of what contributed to this. Now, I'll take you back to the 50s. In the 50s, there was great concern because seemingly healthy, middle-aged American men were dying of heart disease. And, you know, this had never been seen at the scale it was being seen in the mid to late 50s. So obviously the government got concerned and they got involved and they commissioned a bunch of researchers and scientists and doctors to look into this, to give them an idea of, you know, what is it that's causing this? You know, we are losing very, very otherwise healthy men in their prime to heart disease. And they went on a journey you know, all over the world to try and figure out, you know, whether diet was contributing somehow to heart disease. And they went all over the world and they looked at various populations in Europe and elsewhere. And, you know, for some reason, I've looked at the data in great detail. I won't bore you with it, but you know, they decided that it was cholesterol, and cholesterol is what was directly responsible for causing heart disease and heart attack. So, you know, for 10 years, these researchers went on, you know, for the remainder of the 50s, trying to prove this hypothesis that cholesterol was in fact the culprit. And at the end of their 10 years, they were unable to find any causal link between cholesterol and heart disease, and you know, and say categorically that if you have too much cholesterol, it causes heart disease. They couldn't do that. So they then turned their attention on saturated fats and animal products, which is crazy because you can imagine that they just exonerated cholesterol, and cholesterol is only present in animal products, but somehow animal products and animal fats come back in the mix as causing heart disease. So none of it truly makes sense. And the long and short of it is there has never been any robust evidence to prove that either cholesterol or saturated fats directly cause heart disease. There never has been. And I can challenge anyone to come up with any research article that I'll gladly read to prove otherwise. I have looked and I have read books and done my research. And in fact, in 2015, the USDA, so this is this big nutrition guys in the US, released a statement saying that they've lifted the restriction of cholesterol containing foods being introduced back into the diets. In other words, they said, yeah, you can have eggs and you can have cholesterol-containing foods, because we now know that, we've known for a while that they're not implicated in heart disease. Well, this was known in 1977, 1978. So why wasn't that information trickled down to us? What happened after they decided to implicate fat, essentially, in heart disease, is the US dietary guidelines came out in 1977 and the British ones shortly after that. And they decided that, yeah, fat makes you sick, fat makes you fat, and to stop getting sick, you need to stop eating fat, or at least reduce it significantly from your diet. And this was done based on what I call Swiss cheese science. This is fake science, post-truth science, and they knew it. But anyway, that's what happened, and the consequence of that is that a whole new industry, the food industry, was born. And they came in guns blazing because they could now produce food cheaply, using very, very cheap ingredients. They could strip the fat out of foods, because fat was problematic, because fatty foods spoil faster, they go rancid much more quickly. But now they were allowed to take out the fat. But as you and I know, when you take out the fat in anything, what does it taste of? It tastes of cardboard. It tastes of nothing. Once you take fat out of food, you take the deliciousness out of food. So the food industry worked very hard to make sure they were producing something palatable. And what they did is they put in, highly refined flour products and carbohydrates and a ton of sugar. And this is what enabled us to, enjoy our food, because we've been told to eat, a significantly less reduced amount of fat. I think in the US it was 35% less fat. So there you go. It was an easy message. Fat makes you fat. So take fat out and then we'll all get better. Well, 40 years in, we are fatter, we are sicker than we have ever been. And they still insist that fat is the enemy. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, if I was running a business, I would be broke. I'd be run underground. This is a 30, 40-year experiment that has failed, and they still insist. And the reason they insist, I'm quite a conspiracy theorist. I think there's an awful lot of money to be made by big food and by processed food. Why would you want to stop that gravy train? Why rock the boat? If most people still believe that fat is not good for you, why rock the boat? These guys are making billions at our expense. And remember, when they make us sicker, they make us fatter as well, and make us more likely to take medication for the rest of our lives. So this sort of low-fat movement has been one of the biggest misconceptions ever. So let's talk about calories, because this is something that makes my blood boil. A calorie is a calorie. So what this means is some people, and a lot of people, believe that as long as you burn as many calories as you consume, you will maintain your weight. As long as you burn more calories than you consume, you will lose weight. And obviously, if you burn fewer calories than you consume, you'll put on weight. So let me just tell you that this is nonsense. This is utter nonsense. A calorie has never been just a calorie. Far from it. Our bodies are controlled by very tightly regulated processes. Now, whether you are religious or not, the truth of the matter is we are here as a species to survive and to propagate. we're here for the survival of the species. And so there are certain processes in our body that will happen without our say-so. And these processes are controlled by hormones. And I said earlier, hormones are chemical messengers. So hormones are responsible for growth, for reproduction, for ovulation, for, how fast your heart beats, how cold or hot you are, they regulate literally everything in your body. And when a child is growing, we are very happy to say, yes, it's the growth hormones. When you see your teenager getting taller, yes, it's the hormones, he's getting taller. When you see a moody teenage girl, it's the hormones, isn't it? The PMS. So everything is the hormones. A woman doesn't decide, oh yeah, maybe I should ovulate. No, it'll happen. It'll happen whether you like it or not, unless you use, external contraception. And I said in an article that I wrote, you can't decide not to get aroused if you see someone attractive. It's not something within your control. We are not as in control as we think we are. We are really a very tightly regulated machine. We're the most complex biochemical and chemistry lab in the world. Nothing is left to chance. If you walked outside and it was 0 degrees Celsius, you couldn't decide not to shiver. You're going to shiver, and you're going to have to figure out a way to get your body warm. It's going to happen whether you like it or not. So let's talk about growing. When we're growing, we are quite happy to say, yes, it's the growth hormone. This is what's causing this kid to get taller. But somehow, for some reason, when it comes to getting wider and putting on weight and weight regulation and food, nobody wants to talk about hormones. Yet without food, we would die. This is one of the most tightly, and quite rightly, has to be the most tightly regulated process in the body. And it's regulated by hormones, mainly insulin, and also, a hormone called cortisol. So I mentioned insulin earlier. What does insulin do? Insulin responds to the food you eat. Anything in excess is stored in the organs for later use. That is insulin's role. So calories are processed very differently. If I were to give you 100 calories of biscuits or 100 calories of broccoli, your body would handle that very, very differently. Because the 100 calories of biscuit will raise your sugar levels very, very quickly, and subsequently your insulin levels. And like I've just said, insulin will store excess energy as sugar, and when the stores run out, it will store it as fat. That's what's going to happen, whether you like it or not. If you eat a plate of fish with salad and oil, it will have not nearly as much of an impact on your insulin levels. And therefore, you're not going to put nearly as much weight on, if at all. To put on weight, you need insulin. To lose weight, you need to lose the insulin. This is the formula. How do I know this? You've all heard of type 1 diabetics. These are children who are born with a genetic predisposition, and they develop a diabetes that causes their pancreas to stop producing insulin altogether. And these children have to go on insulin all their lives, right away. Now, before they're diagnosed, before you get these people on insulin, or before the teenagers, some are diagnosed as teenagers, before they are diagnosed with diabetes, how do they all present? 100% of them present with weight loss. 100% of type 1 diabetics present with weight loss. Why? Because they have no insulin. And what's the role of insulin? Insulin is an energy storing hormone. Without insulin, you lose weight. So what about the opposite? Is there a condition in which you can have too much insulin? Yes, you can have what you call a benign tumor, a non-malignant tumor called an insulinoma. What does an insulinoma do? It pumps out tons and tons of insulin into the system. And what is the common feature of this very, very rare disease? 100% of the patients with this insulinoma are obese and grossly obese. So insulin in excess makes you put on weight, and insulin depletion makes you lose weight. And those are two disease processes that can prove to you that actually insulin is central, key, front and center in weight control in the body. Not calories, insulin. So the second reason why the calorie theory goes out the window is there's this thing called the thermic effect of food. So when you eat, for instance, if you eat protein, you have to burn a little bit more energy in processing that protein so that it can be absorbed. That's called the thermic effect. And this is over and above your basic metabolic rate, what keeps you alive and what keeps your heart beating. All right, so the thermic effect of food means that you will need energy to burn those, to make those calories available to the body. So you can consume, 100-gram piece of steak and 100-gram box of chocolates, and the energy it will take to make both of those available to your body will be higher with the steak and lower with the chocolate. So, it's not simply a matter of calories in, calories out. And the third reason why the calorie theory is nonsense is this. So everybody says that to lose a pound of fat, you have to burn 3,500 calories. I'm not even sure where that formula came from, but let's just go with it logically. So to lose 1 pound, you need to burn 3,500 calories, okay, of fat. Okay, so that means that if I put you in a 500 calorie deficit a day, over 7 days, 7 times 5, you would lose, you would have a 3,500 calorie deficit, and you should lose a pound, right? So if you're going to lose a pound a week, if I deny you 500 calories a day, in a year, you should have lost 52 pounds. What about the year after that? You should have lost another 52 pounds. Now hear me out. I weigh 120 pounds. Are you telling me that if I cut down my calories by 500 a day, I would weigh 10 pounds in 2 years? What's happened to your calorie theory then? Why is it that people do not lose the weight they expect to lose? Why is it that despite the calorie theory taking hold, why is it that the results in practice are not what we expect? Why is it that some people will lose more weight than others? Surely if a calorie is a calorie and we are all eating 500 calories less, we should all lose the same amount of weight, and nobody does. Nobody ever does. In fact, most people lose weight only for the first 4 to 6 months, and then it plateaus and almost certainly regained again, often with interest. Why? What happened to the calorie theory? The calorie theory is nonsense, guys. So let's go back to the dietary guidelines, because the dietary guidelines told us in 1977 that we need to reduce the calories we're eating and eat less. So that's what we did. So we reduced the number of calories. A week or two ago, Public Health England told us that we need to go on another diet, one of many. And this one was for us to eat, I think it was 400 calories for breakfast, 400 for lunch, 600 for lunch and 600 for dinner. So that gives you a 1,600 calorie diet. Now, that's fine. They have absolutely refused to understand that it has nothing to do with calories. I have clients who consume 1,000 calories a day and are consistently putting on weight. I have other clients who are consuming 3,000 calories a day and are steadily losing weight. It's not about the calories. So if you reduce the fat in the diet, like I told you earlier, you have to increase the carbohydrate. You have to have something. So they increase the carbohydrate, but that just only puts your insulin up, because the one thing that gets your insulin shooting up more than anything else is sugar and highly processed carbohydrates. And that's what you've replaced for fat. What effect does fat have on insulin? Very, very little. You can literally consume 2,000 calories of fat and not put any weight on. It is actually possible. But if you consume 2,000 calories of sugar-laden food, and I'm talking about, pancakes in the morning, cereal in the evening, a chapati midday, and you consume 2,000 calories of that, you will put on weight over and above what you would expect for the calories, because of the effect that these foods have on your insulin. It's all about the insulin. Now remember, our bodies are in a state of either fat storage, energy storage, or fat burning, energy release. And these processes, like I've said earlier, are governed by hormones. So the hormone responsible for fat storage is insulin, and the hormone responsible for fat release is one called, and glucose release is one called glucagon. Now, what's important is only one thing can happen at a time. You're either storing fat or you're burning fat. You're either storing sugar or you're burning sugar. You can't do both at the same time. So what happens if you're constantly trying to lose weight, yet you're constantly pumping up your insulin with the type of food you're eating? What will happen? You will never access your fat stores. To access your fat stores, you have to have the lowest amount of insulin possible so that the hormones that can get the fat out of the cell can work. So when you see these diets, like the Slimming World diet, where they have you having tons and tons of refined carbohydrates and snacks in between, it's no wonder people have such poor results. The body was not designed to eat like that. We were not designed to assault our pancreas and pump out insulin all day, every day. That is never the design. It has never been the design. So what happens is the government tells us, well, go on a diet, go on a calorie-reduced diet, and we do. And for the first, 4 months, we are steadily losing weight, and we are very excited. And then what happens? We stop losing weight. Why do we stop losing weight? We stop losing weight because our basic metabolic rate, which is your metabolism, and this is the energy that you burn doing nothing, just sitting down doing nothing, your basic metabolic rate adjusts to the calories you're eating. So if you're supposed to be eating 2,000 calories and you start eating 1,600 calories, over time, your basic metabolic rate adjusts to the 1,600 calories. And it keeps doing that. You can reduce your calories further and it will catch up with you. And what happens on low-calorie diets? You feel cold, you're hungry all the time, and you feel like crap. Why? Why on earth would your body make you feel good if you're not giving it the nutrition that it needs to keep going? If you deny your body the nutrition that it needs, it's going to hold on to the calories that you are eating and not want to do anything else. It could be less interested in keeping you warm. It will be less interested in things that should be pleasurable, like sex. Your skin will be dry. Your hair will start to thin and fall. You will not be interested in day-to-day activities. You will start having symptoms akin to depression. This is what happens when people go on calorie-controlled diets. In the olden days, people were put on starvation experiments, and the calories of these men were dropped to, I think it was in fact 1,600, 1,400. And they got so depressed that they wanted to die. They wanted someone to just take away the pain. They were so hungry that they would forage rubbish bins looking for food. We are not designed to undereat. We are designed to eat what we need to keep our bodies going. When we eat enough of what we need, we feel good, we feel warm, and we thrive. When we go on a low-calorie diet, the exact opposite happens. We feel like crap, because we have to feel like crap, because your body doesn't have any energy to make you feel anything else. It's just focusing on keeping you alive. So this is a consequence of low-calorie diets. Now, we're also told, as well as eating less, we're told to move more. So is it that we all decided, all over the world, we all went sedentary? Because I think it's important to look out with where you are. I'm in the UK. All I see is people going to the gym and running and exercise classes and fitness DVDs every January. I actually think people have never moved more in terms of formal exercise. And actually, the research proves it. We are formally exercising far more than we ever have. But in the same breath, we are still putting on weight. So we're eating less and exercising more, and we're still getting bigger. So what's wrong with that formula then? Remember Michelle Obama's Let's Move campaign? I think it was a multi-billion-dollar campaign in the US trying to get kids more active. It failed miserably. The children did not lose any weight. The United Kingdom had a similar program. The children did not lose any significant amount of weight at all. Those strategies to get people moving just didn't work in terms of weight loss. Now, it may have worked for other things in terms of getting people overall healthier. I mean, exercise is the best pill you can give, but we're talking about weight loss. It doesn't work. And the other thing when it comes to exercise, and because I'm often misquoted as saying that I should champion exercise more. I mean, I exercise 3 times a week myself, and I run and walk when I can, when I have time. If exercise were a pill, it would be a bestseller. I recommend it to everybody. It's the #1 thing you can do to prevent neurodegenerative diseases like dementia. It's fantastic for your mood. It can even help maintain weight, and it does that by increasing muscle mass and therefore increasing your basic metabolic rate. I don't have an issue with exercise. I just think exercise is really, really inefficient for weight loss. In fact, the calorimeters in the gym, where it tells you on the treadmill that you're burning 200 calories, those calorimeters are so off most of the time. There were some researchers in Stanford that looked at those calorimeters, and also, like the wearable technologies, like the Fitbit. In one study, they overestimated the calories burned by an average of 24–27%. So, you can be thinking you're hitting the gym and, you're doing this class and you're burning, 600 calories an hour. That's not true. That's not true at all. And we grossly overestimate how much we burn during exercise. And then what happens when you get home after a major workout? You're hungry. You're starving. You want to empty the fridge. I certainly want to. And I'm not hungry for an avocado or salad. I want bread and pasta and cake, and I want energy dense food, highly calorific food. That's what I want. It's no wonder that, at least in my gym and in most gyms I've been to, there's a chocolate machine right outside the gym. Why? Why on earth would you have a chocolate machine and a Coca-Cola machine in a gym? What is going on? Why would you on the one hand tell people to enjoy a healthy lifestyle, and this poor lady goes to the gym, burns 100 calories, comes out of the gym, is starving, and has a Mars bar, 230 calories, and then what's going to happen? I think I've never understood why vending machines are in hospitals either. Why would a hospital need a chocolate or a soda machine? why in the patient's trolleys, why are they filled with all that crap? It's all processed baked goods and chocolates and crisps and candy, and this is in a hospital. We're giving patients what's actually making them sick. It's crazy. It's crazy. And the ones who are trying to do something and trying to get down to the gym, as soon as they get out, there's 3, 4, 5 chocolate machines before they get to the exit. I mean, what chance do we have? I said in an article of mine, I mean, it's either a great stupidity or a great conspiracy. And in my eyes, it's a conspiracy. There are vested interests here. So, okay, so eat less, move more is not working. So I'm coming up to just about an hour. So like I said, I can talk about this until the sun goes down, but I'll try and wrap it up. So what is it that's making us fat and sick? I think we all know that the culprit is processed food, and I'm talking about highly processed carbohydrates and sugar. Other culprits can be things like trans fats. So these are really, really bad fats that cause inflammation and also make us sick. But in terms of what is ubiquitous, what is present all over the world, all over what has evolved in our food environment, the consistent thing is processed food, fast food, confectionery, packaged foods, packaged cereals, instant this, instant that. That is what has exploded. That is why we have 54,000 processed food products, food in rabbit ears, processed food product in our supermarket shelves. They are pumping them out faster than we can eat them. And this is what's making us sick. And there you are trying to do the right thing and buying something low fat. What do you think has been put in that product to make it edible? When they take the fat out, they put the sugar in. So they've destroyed a perfectly healthy food. For instance, yogurt. Pure natural Greek yogurt is one of the best foods I eat. I recommend it to all my clients, all of them. But when you take the fat out and you pump it full of sugar and flavorings and additives, then what's happening? First of all, fat, as well as being very good for you, and there's absolutely no evidence that it's bad for you, natural healthy fats, it's satiating. It makes you feel good after a meal. It makes your tongue feel good. Meals without fat have to be very, very sugary or very, very salty. And I've just defined the composition of processed food. Very, very salty, quite a bit of sugar, and quite a bit of processed carbohydrates with very little fat, so that it doesn't go bad. That's why they do it, so that it doesn't go bad. So the World Health Organization tells us to eat 6 teaspoons of sugar a day or less. In one of my articles, I write about a typical British diet, and I rounded it up to 30 teaspoons a day of healthy food. 30. We're not even coming close. We're having more than 4 times what we're supposed to be having, because everything is laced with sugar. Absolutely everything is laced with sugar. Now, sugar is a toxin in excess. There's no doubt about it. In our bloodstream, at any one point, we have 1 teaspoon of glucose. That's it. That's all you have in your bloodstream. Your body doesn't want a ton of glucose in your bloodstream, and it'll get rid of it as quickly as possible. But what we are doing is we are consuming more sugar than we have ever consumed in our lifetimes. And this is having a serious impact on our health. Why? Because table sugar is made out of glucose, 1 part glucose, 1 part fructose. These are simple sugars. Glucose, I have told you how it's metabolized. It causes an insulin release. It's used if it's needing to be used, and if it's not needing to be used, it gets stored as extra sugar or as fat. But what about fructose? Fructose doesn't have an effect on insulin, so it gets absorbed directly into the liver and is immediately converted into fat. So sugar is uniquely fattening. One part of it will cause your liver to store excess sugar and excess fat, and the other part of it will directly cause your liver to store it as fat. And then you get a fatty liver and you get all the diseases that we talked about earlier. Sugar is not a food. Food is nutrition. Sugar has absolutely 0 calories. There's no nutrition in it at all. In my opinion, it should not be classed a food. And if it's not a food, our governments have absolutely no place in giving us a recommended daily intake of something that is not a food. They shouldn't do it. I am not interested in a recommended daily intake of something that could potentially make me sick and something that we are all eating to excess because it's everywhere. So the sugars are found in the processed foods and in juices and smoothies and refined carbohydrates like pasta and all the multiple packaged carbohydrate products you'll find in your supermarket. That is where sugar hides. Sugar is no longer what you add to your tea or your coffee or what your grandma added to her tea or her coffee. Grandma wasn't exposed to Cheerios or Cocoa Pops or mandazis all day, every day, and chapatis and chocolate and crisps and microwave dinners. None of that. Sugar is a toxin. It's a dose-dependent liver toxin. You eat too much, it will destroy your liver. That's what happens. They even say that you only have to take 1 or 2 sugary drinks a day to increase your risk of developing type 2 diabetes by 26%. 1 can of Coke a day can increase your risk of type 2 diabetes by 26%. So we've moved away from traditional diets. Sugar dominates, fast food dominates. Fast food is controlled by big companies. They come into cities. They can afford to squeeze traditional food retailers out because they have the money behind them. They're powerful. I've not been to Nairobi for a year, but I hear that, everywhere you turn is a fast food joint. I don't remember that growing up. It's everywhere now. Pizza deliveries, KFC, the list goes on. And not just in Kenya, but all over Africa, Asia. The Chinese never, ever, ever had a problem with obesity until the US exported fast food. And now they have one of the highest rates of diabetes in the world. Look at the MENA region. Look at the Middle East and North Africa. Qatar, almost 70% of the Qatari population is obese. Kuwait, same thing. Saudi Arabia. Look at Egypt. More than half of Egyptians are morbidly obese. What is going on here? It's a sugar, it's a processed food, it's a fast food, it's trendy, it's popular. We want it. It's people feel it's prestigious to eat these foods, And I'm telling you that actually in the US, the sales of soft drink are declining, sugary soft drink, but these companies are still pumping out billion-dollar profits. How? They've come to Africa, they're in Asia, they're in developing lands, they're going to, they're in South America. They're going to make money somehow at our expense. And remember that sugar is addictive. It reacts and plays with the reward system in the brain. It's not that easy to give up, and they know this. And that's how they manufacture it. And that's why they put it in everything, because they know you'll keep coming back for more. So I promised that I would wrap up, and I'm going to, I'm not really sure how to check if there's any questions, but before I do that, I'm just going to tell you what, in my opinion, as an obesity and weight management physician, what I think are the things that you can start doing right away to get you started. If you're struggling with your weight and you've tried the low-calorie diets or any other diet out there, and you don't know where to start with this. And this is information, or at least some of the information that I give my clients. Remember that the most important thing to do if you're overweight and obese is check and see whether you meet the criteria for the metabolic syndrome. Is your blood pressure high? Are your blood sugars high? Do you have a very large waist? And what about your lipid levels? What are your triglycerides doing? Those are the things that you should be checking with your doctor. Because if you have, like I said, if you have one, then you need to be frightened and act. If you have three, then you need to radically change your lifestyle, radically. It's probably worth mentioning that the diseases that I mentioned, heart disease, diabetes, cancers, they tend to occur more aggressively in certain populations, certain ethnic groups, of which are Indians, so people from the South Indian continent, and Africans and African Americans. So for some reason, these ethnic groups tend to be hardest hit and get the more aggressive and the more refractory diseases. And that means you would need so many pills to get on top of them. So what can you do? So the first thing you need to do is cut out the sugar. And when I say cut out sugar, yes, I'm talking about cut out the 6 teaspoons with your tea and coffee, but I'm also talking about the smoothies, the juices. Because at the end of the day, yes, it's a fruit, but your body doesn't care. Below the neck, like I said, all carbohydrates are broken down into simple sugars. Your body doesn't know that that glucose or fructose has come from a mango or a Mars bar. It has no idea. So whatever you're doing, if you're doing it to excess, you need to stop it. You can absolutely have an apple, but you don't have any business, if you're struggling with your weight, squeezing 5 or 6 apples, throwing away the healthy fiber, and drinking, pure sugar. You have no business doing that. And I do realize that there's a very, very popular diet program going on in Kenya right now, and this particular lady is encouraging people to juice and to have lots of smoothies. That is processing. That is called processing food. You're taking a perfectly natural product, you're stripping it of its membrane and fiber and seeds, and leaving only the moisture, and that is just pure sugar, and drinking that. That was never designed by nature. Your body has never been designed to accept that insult of glucose and fructose all at once. If you're struggling with your weight, you have no business juicing or drinking juice. The same thing for smoothies. If they're not vegetable-based smoothies, you shouldn't be doing it. It's too much sugar. You need 5 or 6 oranges and 8 or 9 carrots to make the equivalent glass of juice. You and I know that you can drink that glass in a minute, but you cannot sit down and eat 5 oranges in one sitting. Because of the fiber, it will fill you up too quickly. And that's by design. So, leave nature alone. She's not stupid. She's trying to help you. Do not juice or puree your food. Leave it as it is. Leave it as it is, especially juicing, because it takes away all the good things I mentioned earlier. You also need to read the labels. Sugar is in everything. I tell my clients, if it needs a label, do you need to be eating it? Do you need to be eating something that has a nutrition label? I'm talking about a nutrition label that says these are the carbohydrates, this is the fat, this is the this is the that. If it needs that, do you need to be eating it? Is this a real food or not? And I would argue that it's not, and you don't have any business needing it. A broccoli doesn't have a food label. A piece of meat doesn't have a food label. A bag of rice doesn't have a food label. None of your grains have a food label. None of your spices have a food label. When you start having ketchup, then you get a food label. We need to read our labels and make sure we understand that sugar is hidden in virtually everything. We need to eat real food. Eat like your grandma ate. Eat things that you can recognize. Chop up your potatoes and make the chips that way, if you must. You know, you need to be cooking from scratch, and not buying, you know, bird's eye chicken or bird's eye this and frankfurters. And those are not real food. You should be able to recognize what you're eating. And it should hopefully not be in a package. You know, sometimes you can't help it, but if it's not in a package, it's probably good for you. More than that, you need to get your blood tests checked. For all my clients, I will check all the blood tests I think necessary, particularly the thyroid hormones, the stress hormones. You know, is there another reason why you're not able to lose weight? I check for pre-menopause, you know, because lots of ladies develop insulin resistance as they approach the menopause. Is that what it is? And then we can address that and address it aggressively. Find out what's going on with your body and make the change. And educate yourself. Like I said, I was not taught anything about nutrition in medical school. I have taught myself what I know, and I've done the work and I've done the research, and you can too. You don't have to believe me. Go out there and look it up yourself. If you like, I can put a link of all the books and all the journals that I read on a daily basis, so that, you know, you can look it up yourself and just have, you know what's going on. And the last thing is, we need to be less sedentary. And what I mean is, because most of us are now stuck in day jobs, we do need to move more. And we're not moving more for weight loss. We are moving more because our bodies need it. We were designed to move. We were not designed to sit still for hours and hours on end. And like I said, exercise in whatever shape is one of the best things you can do. You don't need to go to a gym. You don't need to have an expensive membership club. I tell all my clients that I'd much rather they had a brisk walk outside 20 minutes a day, got some sunlight, which helps with their sleep hormones and their stress levels, and breathe the fresh air. You know, that's what they need to do, coupled with some resistance training. And your own body weight is more than enough for resistance. You don't need anything fancy. But if you're struggling with your weight and you want to do something about it, I want you to remember that it's all about insulin. If you manage your insulin, you will manage your weight. There's lots of resources out there telling you how to do it, what to do. My Facebook page, my Insulin Facebook page is full of information. I post twice a week at least. My original articles or articles I've pulled from the media. Read those, read them for yourself, and discover the books that I have read and that others read. Just take an interest. And, you know, if you're still a bit dubious about the hormonal theory of weight regulation, look it up. You look at the evidence for yourself, and then we can have another conversation. So I hope you found that useful. Someone is asking, Valentine's asking, how do we lower insulin? Well, the most important thing is to stop eating sugar, Valentine. And like I said, sugar is not just the crystals you add to your drink, to your hot drink. Sugar is in all the processed food. So the number one way to start reducing your insulin is to stop eating sugar, stop adding sugar to your diet, and stop snacking. Just completely stop snacking, stop having smoothies, stop having juices, stop adding extra sugar, and start with that. And do that for 2 weeks. Allow your body to get used to that, because sugar is addictive. You know, I read that sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine. Remember that when we were growing up, we would chew the sugar cane itself, you know, to get the sweetness. And that's what the cacao, the cocoa farmers in Colombia and Nicaragua did. You know, they would chew the cocaine leaves, but it only becomes a toxin when it's processed, okay? So with cocaine, it's processed into a white powder. With sugar, it's processed into a white crystal. The toxicity lies in the processing, which is why I say just eat the whole fruit. Don't mess about with it. And if it's obvious sugar, avoid it. And if you're trying to avoid added sugar, just avoid anything that needs a nutrition label. That is the fastest and easiest way to avoid added sugar in your diet. Hi, Wanja, did you have a question for me? I don't think, I'm not sure how to check for any more questions, but I'd be more than happy if anyone wants to message me or ask me for my, to reference what I have said. Anything I have said is based on evidence. I'm more than happy to provide you with a full list of my references and my resources, or the books I have read, the journals I read. You know, if anyone wants to know how to contact me, you can find me on my website or on the Insulin page on Facebook. If you feel that this was useful and you want a little bit more in-depth information, I'm organizing a weight loss masterclass that will run once a week over 4 weeks, and we'll break it down, and it's intense, and we'll go through what I've discussed and much more. And the intention is to just get everybody understanding how they got so fat and so sick. So that's it. I think 1 hour, 16 minutes of me talking nonstop is quite a lot. Carol Maya, it's all about the money. Absolutely. Like I say, guys, follow the money. Follow the money. If anyone is offering you a drug, follow the money. Who sponsored the study that allowed this drug to come on the market? You will be surprised by what you'll find. I'll have you know that only about 70% of the studies out there are actually valid. The conflict of interest is appalling. Even evidence-based medicine has been hijacked by these big corporations. But the truth is there. So, I've said what I have to say. I encourage you to do your own research or get in touch with me, and we'll take it from there. So thanks, guys, and hopefully see you soon. Bye-bye.